Hello, hello. How is everybody doing today? I think I should be live. Let me double check. Yep, should be live. My weekend was very, very sleepy. Yeah, no camera today. I'm sorry. I look like shite. Mute rule, not radio. Is she live? She isn't live, I think. So in that case, if she goes live later today, we can rate her. How about that? Yeah, so I've been doing some things. Let me get some children in here. It's gonna be a React node. Hello, default. I know. But I'm not ready for webcam right now. Children, if I can spell children right. Okay, so maybe I'll give you a little tour of what's been happening so far. So we have a user on the top right, it's me. Then we have accounts, so you can work for multiple companies, and this is like the accounts view. And when you look at a specific account, you can see some information like company name, email, language, currency, phone, yada yada yada, some payment methods. Hi Wally. And then each account, like this company, has several clients. So we have a clients view, which is pretty similar. We have like this nice little time zone viewer. So you know immediately that there's like time zone difference. If the time zone is the same, then you won't see this. Will you add stories? For sure. I think I need to add fleets as well and spaces and stuff like that. So we have this list. When we look into one, we have a ton of information going on. So we have the classic same general data up here. We have each contact. You can't do anything with it currently, but you can see the contact, so that's something. You can see the state of invoices. So 1 invoice has been drafted, 6 invoices have been sent, and 13 invoices have been paid. And there's like a little overview with the invoice number, the price, the state, and the issue date. Then up here, there's like a little summary, which is like a reflection of all the sums of these invoices. And then there's like a fun little projection going on where I basically capture all the timestamps. So whenever we send an invoice, we basically press start. Then when we pay the invoice, we press stop and we get a difference in time. And then we accumulate it over time. So now we can show a fun little metric like usually pays within 7 hours. The slowest has been 13 hours. I did all of this offline. I'm sorry. I wasn't ready to stream. And I also have like this little timeline. I think I worked on this timeline before. I've been sharing some screenshots in the Discord, so make sure to join the Discord. Very important. Let me also do this real quick. Okay. But yeah, so here's like a little timeline. I should probably improve this, but we added the company, we added contacts, and yada, yada, yada. So now I basically want to work on some dashboarding. So I look like shite. I basically want to work on this page. So a lot of people have been asking for dashboarding, so I was thinking about what I could do, what I could work on. And I think one of the fun things we could do is basically have like some boxes up here where we see the amounts and the like how many invoices have been drafted, how many have been sent, how many have been paid, how many are overdue, that kind of stuff. How many clients we have, who the fastest payer is, like some sort of high score. Maybe like an upcoming invoices in the next 14 days, maybe some histograms or something. So maybe we'll work on the layout a little bit, what this could be. And then we can actually implement it to get actual data from what we recorded so far. Better include cute cat gifs. Yeah, sure. I will add some cat gifs and videos and stuff like that. So yeah, basically I have like a pretty empty page up here. So I already took a little card here at the bottom. I don't know if it's really useful, but it's basically just said I said GIF first and then I said GIF. I used both of them at the same time and you still caught me, so I am fired. You are fired. Do you like Dokusaurus? I like Dokusaurus for people that use it. Like, I prefer custom documentation pages. But if you don't want to use it, I think Dokusaurus is fine. I think Jest uses it. What's a good generator you like? I don't know. We have like documentation for headless UI, which is completely custom. The documentation on MKDocs, never heard of that one. Documentation of Tailwind CSS is also custom, so I like custom things, I guess. Yeah, so let's see. Basically what I did in this card is I'm using grids and I have some call spans predefined for like a 12 column grid. And the reason why I have them prefixed with MD is just because I want to show them like in actual grid form once we are on the MD breakpoint. Otherwise, I just want them to be displayed below each other. So if we have a card, I think we have some footer stuff in here that we can use. All right. So what this could be is something like drafted or in draft mode. We have one for paid. We have one for sent. And we have one for overdue. So that should show me something. And these are pretty big right now, so I want them all by them like in columns, side by side. So this one should be 3/12. This one should be 3/12. The same here. Now when I go big enough, that should do something. But apparently it's not doing that because what is size? Yeah, that should be fine. That should result in calls when. Interesting. Is my server not running anymore? Oh, it is. It is. I might be doing something very stupid. Just not sure what yet. Can I undo it until I have this thing set up yet? Okay. So this one works. That's pretty odd. So what did we say? We said send draft. Hello trash dev, you are very first. The firstest paid and where's the camera? I look like shite. I don't want to be on camera. Draft send paid overdue. Interesting. It's probably because of this git flow stuff. Just put a picture of yourself in the corner. I feel weird without it. Oh god. Can I even do that? Can I? Let's see. Can I take a picture of this webcam somehow? I don't see an option immediately to do that. I'm sorry. Trying to be a hacker man. Not trying to be, I am the hacker man. Too many lights on, yeah. For sure. For sure. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm not gonna bother with actually abstracting this stuff just yet. Just gonna do this instead. Let me make a bit more room. Let me get rid of this. Hello, GitQueb. How are you doing? Okay, so I need something to display in here. Let me also do this because I want to look at a different project where I did something similar. I'm going to steal something from. Okay. Where is this thing? Where is this thing? Drafts. This should show me something. Yep. 5, 6. What does your class names utility do? It allows me to concatenate classes together. That's about it. Oof. Now you need to drink some milk and raw eggs. So I also need like some form of icon in here. I think I have this already somewhere. Status icon map. Okay, where is this used? Status display. Let me export this. Hello, Codico. How are you doing? UI. Where was this located? In I was just there. Invoice status. Okay. Invoice. I'm hungry. My delivery won't arrive. Oof. RIP. I hope it will arrive soon, or you will starve. So draft icon is gonna be status icon map of status of draft. I think that's how I can do it. Draft icon. That's a nice pencil. I think I can basically steal this from here. Just gotta stay drunk. I think I want to create something similar to this. But for now, let's say text gray 500. Let's put him in another div. Something like this, and then this one should also get like a height and a width. Okay. Okay, I think I can go a bit lighter and a bit smaller. And one funny trick we can apply is to do this. Peachy gray. This is very, very dark. I'm not sure if I like this, but oh well. Oh well. All right, let's see. One thing. So I also need the word draft up there somehow, somewhere. How am I doing it in my other project? What part of the app is this? This is going to be the dashboard where we are displaying some nice statistics and stuff. Here's one thing I can do. I can basically, yep. copy HTML. This is from my different project. Class name. Is it possible to create a sliding menu with headless UI like this? Maybe. Okay. This is looking a bit nicer, I think, with the blue link. So what I will do is make this status display or something. And we will get the status, and we will get the amount, and we will get invoices. Status is gonna be status, amount is gonna be a number, and invoices is gonna be a number as well. This SVG can be an icon, and this icon will be my status icon map for this status. Sure. This is gonna be the actual status in here. And this one will be the money one. And this will be invoices. Okay, so this one will be status of draft. Amount is gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4. And invoice is gonna be 0. This is gonna be sent, paid, overdue, something like this. Okay, now what we can do is grid gap 4. Hello, maybe stupid question, but is Tailwind better than Bootstrap? It's better, it's worse, it's the best, it's everything. Choose whatever, use whatever you like to use. Okay. Something like this. Let me move this to the bottom. Draft send paid overdue. This is okay. This is fine. Now maybe we can get some real data in here. Export async function gets, what do we call this? Get server side prop, server side props, return props of something. state statistics, state stats, something like this. And then we will get something like, I don't know, status.draft is gonna be amount 1, 2, 3, 4. Invoice is 0. Did I need something else? No, I think this is fine. Send. This is gonna be paid again, and this is gonna be overdue. And then in here we can get our props. And I have this small helper so that I can get this information. So this might be a better way by doing this pre-thingy. JSON stringify props. This is empty. When I refresh, this should be filled in. So we get draft, sent, paid, and overdue from the server now. So that's progress. So I think to make my life a little bit easier is when I turn this into an array. And then in here we can say status. That might be a bit easier. My life changed with Tailwind. Mine as well. So that should give me an array. I think an arrays, normally I try to use objects a lot, but since I'm just going to loop over it, I think an array might be nicer. So what I will be able to do in here is basically say props.stats.map. Does using layer base consider as a bad practice? You want to use layer base if you want to put like base styles into your actual base layer. So think of it like resets and stuff, then it should be in base. If you want to use components, then put them in components. If you want to put them in utilities, then you use utilities. This is gonna be stat.status, stat.amount, and stats.invoices. Thank you for the follow, RGODev. And of course, always return. So now I have draft, sent, paid, and overdue. That's good. Now, let's write a projection for this so that we can get actual data. Because if you look at like the invoices, these are all the invoices that are currently available in the system. Thanks for the follow, Gen CNG. Yeah, so let's see how we want to do this. So it basically, I'm going to do things that you probably never see or almost never see or is advised against to do, but I'm just going to store very denormalized state. So one thing that I want to do is create, shall I copy this one to make my life a bit easier? Yeah. And create small statistics table. Small statistics. Okay, good. So what will this have? This is gonna be scoped to an account ID. And the reason for that is I want to, so imagine you are logged in as Smitham LLC, then you want to see the statistics for this user account, basically. So that's the account ID. What else do I want? So you're going to use xstate. Close. I'm using some form of states, but you will see in a second. So what else did we have in here? A status, an amount, and invoices. Okay, so we are going to say status is a string. Amount is gonna be, is it integer? Sure. And what else do we have? Invoices. This is also gonna be an integer. Invoices. Not nullable, not nullable, not nullable. I can default to 0. Is that how you do it? I think something like this. So I have a migration. And now when I refresh this, I have small statistics. They are currently empty. So now we need to write a projection for this. And basically what we will do is we will go over all the events in the system that happened, and we will fill this table to get like real results in here. So one thing that is there a cube game going on? Interesting. I forgot about the cube game. Nice. Yes, stream elements did. Isn't that nice? Isn't that nice? Okay, so we are going to our domain. I think I have, where is this thing located? Let's copy this one and let's make this like a statistics projector. Oof, this contains a lot of crap. Okay, let's get rid of all of this. We don't need it anymore. Okay. Small statistics. Small statistics table. I'll go over this in a second on how you can read this. Let me delete all unused imports, sure. Small statistics tables. Small, what is the small dash statistics? Okay. Statistics. Okay, so how you should read this is we have like an interface where we define our structure of the table. So we have an ID, an account ID, we have status, amount, and invoices. So status, amount, invoices, and these are numbers. Cool. Then I have a small statistics table. This is just a function that returns like a connects instance, and this is already scoped to this small statistics table. And the reason why I type this is so that I get code completion for these fields. So small statistics table, small statistics projector. It's a better name. So now this last function in here is basically providing contexts. So whatever you return in here can be used in each of these other functions. And then the second argument is an init function. And the first one is an object where we have our event that happened. So account has been added. And you can get access to the small statistics in here. So basically what we are interested in is when an invoice has been initialized. Let's see. Invoice actions. Initialize invoice. Invoice has been initialized. Okay. And this is invoice has been initialized. And basically what we want to do is whenever we have an invoice that has been initialized, we want to go to the small statistics table and we want to insert a row, which is going to be the account ID. And we don't have that information just yet, so we will get there in a second. We need a status, which we know is going to be draft because it's just been created. So let me import this one. We also need an amount, and the amount is now going to be oh, I already forgot something. Basically what we want to do is we want to get the account ID is going to be something. Then we want to find the existing row, which is going to be small statistics table, where account ID is going to be this account ID. We want the first one. And then let me fill this in with something for now. We also need to make this async. So if we have an existing row, we want to do something. Otherwise, we want to do something else. So if we don't have an existing row, then we want to create a row with the amount being event.payload. This is going to be interesting, but this one is going to be 0 for now. And what was the other thing we wanted? Invoices. Invoices is going to be 1 because that's a current invoice. Current invoice. 0 because we don't have invoice items just yet. Okay, if it already exists, then we want to take the existing one, or let's do it like this: small statistics dot update, where account ID is gonna be account ID, and we want to update this one. This also needs to have a status of status draft, because it's going to be this one specifically. Yeah, updates. And what do we want to update? We want to update invoices to have existing.invoices +1. And we also want to say amount is going to be whatever the amount was plus something in here. That's basically the goal. So this currently obviously is incorrect. Let me register this projector to import. Okay, so this is obviously wrong because we don't have our account ID yet. We don't know this number yet, but let's see where we get so far. So when I reset my projections, we will basically fill up the table, and you will notice that we have new rows getting inserted. And the reason for that is because we don't know this account ID, so these should be grouped for sure. These are not filled in. Status is correct, invoices is not correct. So let's see if we can get the account ID. For that, what I want to do is, what does this invoice look like currently? We have a client ID. Okay, so what we can do is client, I think it's client has been added. Client actions. Client has been added, okay. Client has been added. This one will have an event, and this event is gonna be whatever the return type is of client has been added. This one will have a bit more information. So we do have the account ID and client ID. So what we will do is we create account ID by client ID map, which is going to be a map or a new map that goes from client ID to account ID. Import these, import these. Okay. Will this be open source? I'm not sure yet, maybe parts of it. So what we will do is basically get the account ID by client ID map. And in here, what we will be able to do is account ID by client ID set. What do we want to set? The key is gonna be the payload client ID, and the value is gonna be the account ID. So now that we have this set in here, we can basically get the account ID. And why we can get this, because we already know the client ID because it's stored in this event. So now we should be able to get an ID. So this means that all of them with the same client ID should be squashed. And the invoices and amounts will go up. However, the amount is still going to be incorrect. But let's see what happens if we reset the projections. Did something change? Nothing changed. Let's see, do we even get an account ID? We do get an account ID, that's for sure. Okay, so we did something wrong somewhere. So, excuse me. What's in our existing thing? It's all gonna be undefined. Oh, account ID, status draft. That's a bit annoying. Why is that? We do have an account. This will be undefined. Where account ID? Oh, where account ID? We need to update this one as well. Because that's sort of our key. And in here, oh, I'm inserting the client ID. I should insert the actual account ID. Thanks for the follow, Max Fanky. So let's fill in the correct one. That should be better now. So now we do have existing rows. So now my homebrew keeps uninstalling only slightly. Oof. That's sad. So now we basically have 2 account IDs. And we have 18 invoices for each. Let's quickly verify that this is correct. We have 3 accounts, but it could be that some of the accounts don't even have clients, or if they have, that there are no invoices linked to it. So yeah, this one is the only client currently. And this client, Murray Group. Interesting. Wait, what is going on? Clients index. Oh, I should not do this for now. Let's do this instead. We have more clients, okay. Is the client profile already working with real data? Yes, yes, that's working with real data. So here are all the things that happened. So this is real data, and we should be able to verify that. So one thing that I will do once the this page or this projector is working is that we can look at like a specific account and manually verify that everything works. But it's all based on real data. So one of our issues currently is that we need to I guess we already technically have data, right? So I think we can hook this up already, and then we will improve. Usually pays within X. Yeah, that's already working. Are you interested in how that works, or not really? If so, then I can go over it. Let me go to the. Thanks for the Prime sub, Leonard. Thank you very much. Leonard Gessler, thank you. So let's see if we can get this data out. Small statistics is gonna be await small statistics table, and basically I needed to do here, make sure to scope this to the current account. But when I do this, small statistics map, yeah, it's like an average, but it also excludes outliers. So if all your invoices are paid within the week, but one invoice is paid like, is forgotten and paid like 1 year after, then you don't want to have that in the usually pays thingy. Okay, so let's see what happens when I refresh this thing. Draft. Okay, that's a lot of stuff going on here. Now, one thing that we can manually test is when I move this to paid, then this should be paid now. But if I reset my projections, then this should be reset to draft. Okay, that's good. So let me quickly show you how the thing is working from the usually pays one. So filter. So this is like a function that, given a list, will calculate like the interquartile range. So it will get like the Q1, Q3, and then do a diff, and then everything outside of those ranges will be filtered out. And I use this in the client projector. Okay. So what I do is whenever we have like an invoice has been sent, When that happens, then we set the send date, which is seen here, the send date for this invoice to be whatever the recorded time is for that event. And then when the invoice gets paid, then what we will do is look up the send at date, which is going to be filled in. Usually, there might be a situation where you don't have this this use case. This is, for example, when you get an invoice that's already been paid or something. So technically you've never sent it, but you have to make an invoice, or you get like a bonus or whatever, that kind of stuff. Then we get to pay that one. We will do a diff. What do you use for DB for queries? Currently using combination of in-memory stuff and MySQL, but my projections can be anything, so doesn't really matter. So we get a difference in minutes, we get a client ID, we basically store a list as well of all the previous things that happened, and then we push to that list as well. And once, the reason for that is so that we can have a full list to prevent rounding errors. And then we look up the existing row and we update the slowest payment in minutes, we update the fastest payment in minutes, and we update the average payment in minutes. These are just very, very simple numbers in here. Can I zoom in a little bit? Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. Well, that didn't help. Anyway, so these numbers are the numbers that are used for that little statistic, and they are updated over time. All right, so let's continue with the small statistics. Projector, it's gonna be, let me rename this statistics. Yes. Okay. So we have an existing row, and to make this a bit, admin index. To make this a bit nicer, one thing that we can do is make this 1, 2, 3, rerun our projections. Okay, and when we refresh, that's better data. Now it's actually funny that these numbers, okay, these are fine. So what do we need to know as well? We need to know the total amount. So total amount by invoice ID is gonna be invoice ID and the number. One thing that I should technically do here is clear this and clear these two. Account ID clear, total amounts clear, import the invoice ID, sure. So now what we need to do is invoice item has been added, return type of invoice item has been added, sure. Let's import this one. So total amount by invoice ID, total amount by invoice ID, existing one is gonna be get this by event payload invoice ID, and this is gonna return something or 0, and then we want to set it again by event.payload.invoice ID, and the existing one plus what's the new value gonna be, payload.price times event.payload.quantity, and then times 1 plus event.payload.text amount. I think that is correct. Wait. Price. So the price times the quantity, and then we have to calculate the text amount as well. So what this will do is we'll get some information from that list. So total is gonna be total amount by invoice ID. And do we know the invoice ID? Yes, I think so, invoice ID. So let's see what total, in here it's a bit incorrect, right? Because this one will basically, this already happened. So this will always be 0, I think. Or undefined. Yep, because this already happens. So we don't have to care about this here. However, we need to make sure that we know what the current... Okay, so here's what we need to do. Cam. Okay, here's a cam for you. Let me enable my webcam. Oof, my hair is so funky. Anyway, here's the cam. So what we need to take into account now is the invoice has already been initialized. However, these items are added later. So we need to keep track of what state the current invoice is in. So what we will do is state by invoice ID, new map, invoice ID status. Okay, so let me also make sure to clean this stuff up. State by invoice ID clear. Sure. And whenever we are in here, what we need to do is state by invoice ID sets whatever our invoice ID is. In this case, it's gonna be draft. And whenever we add an invoice item, let's look at all of this information we have so far. Total amount, states, and accounts by client ID. What's up? Hello. I'm okay-ish. So we basically have a huge set of UIDs. So account ID by client ID, we have the state for each, and we have the total prices for each. And then this basically repeats itself. So I think we can work with that data, right? So one thing that we should be able to do is, how is this stored? Hello, Dustsney. Hello, hello. So we have an account ID, an amount. So what we will need to do is basically whenever the status changes is know by the current invoice, look up the account ID and change the invoice to minus whatever is in here. And the amount should also be subtracted based on what the total amount is. And it should basically be added to the next status. So I think that's what we want to do. So we have account ID by client ID. But I think we also want an account ID by invoice ID. And the reason for that is so that we can do quick lookups. I had an overnight Windows update. They've added weather widget to my taskbar. Oof. Oof. Account ID by invoice ID. Account ID by invoice ID. Clear. Okay. So when do we know the account ID? We know it when we initialize this one, essentially. So account ID by invoice ID dot set event dot payload dot invoice ID and account ID. And then let's get this from context. Okay, good. Now when we add an item, what we should do is get the account ID, which is going to be account ID by invoice ID, and we will get this by event.payload invoice ID, account ID. So now we have the account ID in here, and what we should do is we also need to get a state, which should be technically draft. Otherwise, adding invoice items is a bit weird, but status is going to be state by invoice ID. State by invoice ID. Oh, this is just going to be event.payload.invoice ID. Then what we should do is basically we are not working with accounts up here, so let me clean that up. So we should increase the invoices for drafts, and when we don't have one yet, this is correct. Okay. So now what we should do is when we save this, everything should be back to 0. Okay, 0, but we do have the amount of invoices, so that's good. Now, the next thing is gonna be, we need our table. Statistics or existing statistics. Statistics is gonna be small statistics where account ID is gonna be, I'm listening to, good question. Oh, it just stopped. Wanna become famous? Wanna become banned? I'm just listening to a Stream Beats Lo-Fi playlist on YouTube. Okay, so we have the account ID, we have the state, which is gonna be status. So what we should be able to do is basically say update. Let me do it in 2 steps. We need the total price, and here we update the total price because these events will happen after each other. So the global amounts should be updated, but we only have to add this one to the existing row. So we can do that by small statistics, where account ID is account ID and status is status. We want to update this thing. I wanted to become famous. I'm sorry. And what we should do is basically say amount is gonna be the existing one amount plus whatever the total price of this item is. Okay, and this one is gonna fail because I need first on this, making some assumptions. So now this should be filled in. Are you using an ORM? I am not. So now we have some data of drafts, which is good, and some real data. Hello from Doornik. I am from Ghent. Vrijwees. Hello. I'm not using an ORM currently, no. So now we have our drafts going on, but we don't have our... my hair is so... Anyway, now we need to take care of the fact that invoices can move to a different state. So invoice has been sent, will be an event, return type of invoice has been sent. Yes, I'll probably make this async as well. And I'll need some stuff from here. So what does it mean when invoices get sent? Essentially, we need to make a new row with the same account ID, with a status of sent, the amount of 0, and the current invoice, the current state of the invoice should, this value should be -1, and then we should insert a new one. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that we have to take care of. Hey Robin, who are your end users? Tailwind is or passion project? It's just a side project, and I am my own end user currently. So let's see, we need to get some data. State by invoice ID, account ID by client ID. No, I need account ID by invoice ID, and total amount, that's one we need as well. Okay. So when this happens, we need to, status is gonna be state by invoice ID, and our invoice ID is gonna be in the payload. So this is the status. So let's look at this for now. This should give me some drafts. Okay. So what we should do is get the account ID, get event.payload.invoice ID, get the account ID. What does this give me? 9D, that's this one. Okay. So that means that we, small statistics, where account ID is account ID and status is status, we need to update this one, and the invoices should be, can I do something like next.raw in here? Invoices -1, and amount is gonna be amount minus our total. So this is gonna be total. Now I do need to get maybe raw column. I wonder if I need to do something like this. It's a little hacky, but okay. Raw. So what this should do is basically we have this one. So 20 invoices should become smaller. 34 should become smaller. And these numbers should become smaller as well. So cannot read property raw of undefined. You are undefined. Raw. Isn't there like some form of raw function? Where raw? Update raw? Schema builder? Connect schema.raw? Yeah, maybe something like this. So what I'll do is this instead. Does not exist on type of connects. Okay, in that case, I'm gonna be existing is gonna be small statistics. I'm gonna make more queries, but I don't care about more queries right now. Where account ID is account ID, status is status, okay. I think I can do this instead, right? And this is gonna fail because I need to await this thing. Okay. And first, sure. Existing invoices -1 and existing amount minus total, because that's the total of this invoice. So these numbers should all go down. Okay. Did all the numbers go down? All the numbers went down. That's good. So now that they are down, what we need to do is update existing status, move to new status. So what we should do in here is basically say state by invoice ID, set event.payload.invoice ID to status.set send. Good. And now we need to find or update a new thing. So existing send. Await small statistics where account ID is gonna be account ID, but status is gonna be status.send first. And then if we have an existing send, what we want to do then is small statistics dot updates, and invoices should be existing send dot invoices plus 1, and amount existing send amount plus total. And we should not forget to hello Fredkiss, nice name. Should not forget to do this. Existing ID. So this is in case we already have a row for this contact, but in case we don't have it, then we are basically the first one. So in that case, we should just insert, and what will we insert? We will insert the account ID, which is going to be account ID. We need invoices, which is going to be 1, and amount, the existing doesn't exist, is just going to be total. So now this should result in the fact that we will have no default for field status. Yeah, that makes sense. This one is going to be status.send. Let me refresh this thing. Okay. So this should result in the fact that we have drafts and sends. And the reason why we have it duplicated is just because we have multiple accounts. Good. I think. And now we also have to take care of the hello Nicholas Sosa. We also have to take care of the when it's paid. So let me copy this thing, and we basically will do the same thing. Invoice has been paid. Invoice has been paid. Sure. Let me import this one. What should we update? What should we update? This is all fine. This one will become paid. This one will become paid. And this one will become paid. What will this result in? You've got data. But here's one thing that I want to try. I'm going to completely nuke my data, all my data. Going to migrate, and this should all be empty. No clients, no accounts, nothing. Good. So basically what I want to do is do it manually just to verify that our logic is working. So we want to add a where is duplicates? Oh, here it is. Accounts. Add account. Account. I don't know what data it should get. I don't even know what the endpoint is. Do we even have an endpoint for this? Maybe not. Database, domain, no. Pages, API, accounts, add payment method. Interesting. So let me copy this thing then to accounts. And we should add account. Okay. So what data should, oh, it also needs a user ID. Okay, here's the thing that might be faster to do. Let's go into my development seeder. Look at my beautiful password in here. Robin Malfait, leaked. So what I want to do is, I want a single account. I want a single account. Payment method is fine. I want one client for each account. And I want for each client between 1 and 6 invoices. These are the contexts, 1 and 6. Yeah, that's fine. Maybe do this between 1 and 2, and then for each contact they should have only 1 or 2 invoices. I think that's good enough. Let me make sure to seed in development. Yes, that's correct. So we have one account, we have one client, and this client has 2 invoices. So if you go to all the invoices, we only have 2. And as you can see, we have like €3.63 drafted. €3.63 drafted. We have 0 cents because we already moved, and we have 1,644 paid, which moves to here. So that's good. Let's reseed, and maybe we have like more invoices. Now we have a few more. Now everything is paid already. So this should result in everything being paid, but I think my issue here is that my projections are stale-ish. So let's reset those. Okay, so we probably have to debug this a little bit. Because we only have 4 invoices and they should all be paid. But according to this, we have some in draft state and some in send state, which is definitely incorrect. Okay, let's see. Small statistics. Projector. So whenever we initialize an invoice, we want to set the state for this invoice as draft. We want to get the account ID by the client ID, and that one should be set up here. So account ID by client ID, we should set it up here, so that's fine. Then we set the account ID by invoice ID, because we now know the account ID, so that's fine as well. And then the first thing we do is look for an existing row in our small statistics table. And if a row exists for account ID with this account ID, so let's imagine this one with status of draft. If that exists, then what you want to do is, let me change this to existing ID. We want to update these rows, and the invoices should be invoices +1. And we return this, so that's a promise, so they should be correct. In case that one doesn't exist, what we want to do is insert an account ID, status of draft, amount of 0, because we don't know about the amount yet, and invoices should be 1. So I think that is correct. Whenever we add an invoice item, we get the, oh, look, a camera. Yes, I enabled it. It's because some people were asking for a camera. All right, so we have an account ID, we have a status for this invoice ID, and we want to look up the current row for this account and this current status. And this current status is probably always gonna be draft. I'm pretty sure it's always gonna be draft, but let's see. Draft. Okay, that makes sense, because it doesn't make sense to add invoice items to an invoice that has not been, that has already been sent, for example. So where were we? Okay. So what we want to do is a total price of an item. It's gonna be price times quantity times whatever the tax amount is. Is that logic correct? I think I have an invoice projector as well. Tax amount. It's basically this, right? Event payload quantity times price times 1 plus the tax amount. So that should be correct, this line. Total amount by invoice ID, we get this by the invoice ID, and it will default to null. And then we set it by whatever is total invoice price. Total invoice price, okay. And then what you want to do is basically update the account and set the amount to the new thing. That looks correct to me. And when it's set, when we send it, we get the current status, we get the current account ID, and we get the current total. Sure. Sure. Has been sent. Is there one where we have a total of 0? That doesn't sound right. Oh, there is one. Okay. There is one of 0 quantity. Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. So we can verify that we have 18. We have 1211, we have 0, and we have 6864. 6864. What's funny and a little bit strange is that we see them 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Why are we seeing this twice? That's a little concerning. Are we sending them twice? we drafted 1, 2, 3, and 4. We sent 1, we paid 1. We sent 2, we paid 2. We sent 3, we paid 3. We sent 4, and we paid 4. That should be okay. It's a little odd that we get in here multiple times, but maybe that's fine. So what we then do is we'll look up the account ID for the current status, which is still going to be draft, sure. And we will look up the first one. Does that make sense? I think it should, because this should sort of be a status, and account ID should be like a combined key. Update the invoice ID when it's sent, because this is going to be -1 now. And we will subtract the total, which makes sense. We update the state for this invoice. We look up if we already know a line for the sent status and the current account ID. If that's the case, then we update it with +1 and existing sent total. If that's not the case, then we create a row with the total and the invoices. We're also doing, according to this thing, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 invoices, but we only have 4. Do you use 3D for this project? In a few places I have tests. I can probably write tests for this, but I don't know if it will be interesting to the viewer. I think I have some tests actually. Yeah, validate tests. Here is some for a client. So basically, my types are currently incorrect. But basically, given these events, when I add a client, I expect that a client has been added. But I haven't run these tests in a while because I added some more stuff. This is when you want to add a contact, stuff like that. Maybe I can improve them. Maybe I should write tests just to make this this a bit better. But yeah, I'm just confused why it thinks that we have 6. We also have an issue in case that we don't send invoices, but just pay them immediately. Then this logic is basically a bit flawed. So maybe one thing we should do is keep everything in memory, calculate everything in memory. And then instead of doing updates all the time, just overwrite whatever is there. So what I mean by that is let me commit this, and then let's try another approach. That might be a bit better. So whenever we initialize a project, what we will do is insert invoice has been whenever we initialize an invoice, we can create some rows already. Hello, Wafflyzor. How are you doing? It's also getting late in here already, so I'll try this approach, and then this number should be correct, hopefully. So what can we do instead? We for sure want to get a list of all the invoices by account. And we also want to make sure that we get totals for each invoice. And then whenever there is a state change, when an invoice has been added, or when an invoice has been sent, or an invoice has been paid, we basically recalculate all the things and do single inserts. Invoice item has been added, total, okay. Here is basically just going to be a state change. Okay, maybe I should not delete everything. So get an account ID, get a status, get an existing row is not going to be necessary anymore. Guess what we will do instead is gonna be something like, let me look at all our data that we have so far. Total amount by invoice ID, state by invoice ID, and account by invoice ID. Okay. So what we need to do is basically get all the accounts, and okay, I think I know what to do here. Get all accounts is gonna be account ID by invoice ID. Account ID, invoice ID, and then rows. Man, I'm getting sleepy from this music. Let's switch music a little bit. This may or may not be loud. Let me know if it's too loud. Good volume. Oh, hello, Autofights. How are you doing? Shout out to Autofights. Yeah, let's go. Check them out. Good streamer. So total amount by invoice ID, state by invoice ID, account ID by invoice ID. We need to get a list of all the accounts, all the invoices, grouped by state. And also make does Next have an upsert? I need to charge my watch. So this is the data we have, right? So basically what we can do, we know the invoice IDs that's mapped to these accounts. So we already know that we only have 4 invoices. Now we also know that 4 invoices of them are in draft mode. So I think to make my life a little bit easier, one thing that I can do is also keep track of a list of invoice ID by account ID. Well, that's not really necessary. That's not really necessary. Account ID, invoice ID of account ID by invoice ID entries. By account ID is gonna be I can't think anymore, it's too late. How are we doing on time? Almost 2 hours, okay. Okay. Data, we know what we want. This shouldn't be too hard though, is it? Is it gonna be hard? I don't know. Okay. Invoices by account ID. Invoices by account ID. Account ID or empty string or empty array. Invoices by account ID. Account ID. You want to push the invoice ID in. What will this give me? This gives me I I did something stupid, didn't I? Okay, so this should give me a single list, and that's fine for now. So now we can basically loop over these and group them into buckets by state. I think I can go a bit crazier immediately, right? Because one thing that I can do is an object. And then in here, basically what I can do is, this is gonna be the state by invoice ID. State by invoice ID. So now that's gonna be a nested object, cannot read property amount of undefined. You are undefined. Line 90. Thanks for the follow invite. Am I not logging anything anymore? So now they should be grouped. That's not really nice, so console dir dir. Okay, and now I basically want depth being null maybe, or infinity. Okay, so now this is draft. Total amount by invoice ID. This should result in something nicer, I think. 3 amount, 4 amount. Okay. Now I think what we can do is move this into a function. get the context, and we will need accounts. I basically want this stuff. So here's what I can do instead. Do this. Do this. Do this. Do this, and now let's also make sure to move this in here. Now we have a nice helper function. So in here, what we should be able to do is just say return updates. And we should be able to get this from here. And now I basically should be able to reuse this in here. So what I'll do here is move to the new state. We set this state by invoice ID, sure. Then we don't care about this anymore, but we do care about this update. And then we do the same here. So that's a little bit nicer. Now this update is now sort of complaining. Like this. Let's see what this results in. This should result in the correct thing eventually. Update is not defined. Is it in invoice has been paid? Okay. Okay. Paid. Move to new state as an update. Move to new state as an update. Move to new state as an update. Okay, this might be a bit better to or easier to reason about, right? So let me make some room and scroll up a bit. So we have one invoice that's an invoice item has been added, more has been added. So we have 2 invoices, we have 3 invoices, 2 items here. Here's probably one where we have like no price. So this is all drafted. Then we are starting to send some. So we basically go to 3 instead of 4. So we move 1 from here to here, and this price now reduces. And then we also paid 1 already. So this reduces even further. And eventually there are in paid and in draft state, then in paid and send state, and leftover is just full paid state. Paid state. Hello, Raven. So this is now correct. So now the only thing we need to do is reflect this into the database. And then we're basically done with this, which is pretty nice, because now the only thing we have to do is keep track of what the total amount is. So how are we going to do that? How are you doing, Raven? Something like this? Yeah. So we have an account ID. And for this account, we need to do something. So what we can do is basically, what is the next version? What do you mean with the next version? Oh. Didn't they always have a server side? Was that like one of the main things? There used to be like a get static props, I think it was, but you could also do DB calls and stuff in there if you wanted to. And I'll probably need object.entries around this one. Count and any, that's interesting. Oh. I'm using it with Knex. It works. And it's currently version 10.2. Okay, so we have this thing that's correct. Okay. Context.smallStatistics, where accounts ID is accounts ID and status is this thing, that existing. If existing, if that's the case, then we want to update ID update. And what do we want to update? The invoices and which is going to be count and the amount. And if there is none of them, then we just want to insert, and we insert the account ID. And we invoices amount, and status is gonna be status, just like this. Can enter the property ID of undefined. You are undefined. It makes sense though. Okay. €18 in draft, €18 in sent, and €18 in paid. That doesn't make sense at all. Oh, I know what's happening, and that's also what happened last time. I basically need to clear everything for this account ID. Isn't Tailwind just CSS moved as class names? It's just CSS, yes. I don't know what your question is here. So this existing call will never be true now. Okay, so now this is all paid, so that's better. So now let's reseed and get more information. They're all paid again. Can we get into a state where they are not all paid? Okay, so 335 is draft and 241 is paid. 335, 241, okay. That's good. I think one thing I want to do is basically insert an empty row always. So that's gonna be status at draft, count 0, amount 0. And the reason for that is just so that we can have 0 values and that we always have the correct order. Draft send paid overdue. So this will always exist. Let me reset my projections. Nice, so now we have draft, send, paid, and overdue. And now this is using real data. So if I get some new data, we have 3 paid, 1 draft, 3 paid. I mean, it's a lot of boilerplate and utilities instead of writing less as CSS. You use utility class names. Is it really helping once you learn it? It is for me. I can go real quick. I mean, if you don't want to use it, don't use it. It's that easy. It's gonna be a record, and this record is gonna be account ID, and this is gonna be a record in itself by status, by count number and amount number. I mean, I don't have to set up less and ses and SCSS. I don't have to think about names for certain components. Let's look at this index file. So I have a status display component, sure, but everything in here is not named, so I don't have like status display root, status display wrapper, status display icon, status display icon wrapper, status displaying content. So that stuff I don't have. All these classes, if I use overflow hidden here once, or I use it in 20 different places, it's only going to be injected in my CSS one time. So it's going to be a small CSS file. So if you care about semantics, which doesn't exist in CSS, but oh well, then you probably want to give them names, but I don't want to give them names. And I already know if I look at this, like, oh, this icon is going to be width 6 and height 6, and it's going to be in some gray color. So I already know what this is. If this had a name like class name of icon dash, no, status display icon, I would know it's a status display icon, but I don't know what it looks like. So anyway. Okay, so this is correct now. And I think I'm gonna call it a day. Let's just quickly see if we can generate a bit more data. Okay, we have a bit more data now. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clients. How many? We have a lot of invoices now, a lot of drafts, a lot of paid, a lot of sends. And this is this correct? So we have 8 invoices here, 9 here, and 19 here. So that's basically 1636-ish. How many do we have here? We have 62. But they are for different accounts. So that's something we have to care about. Let me reset my projections just to be sure. Yeah, this is completely wrong now. Oh, it's still running. Okay, never mind. 12 seconds, interesting. Okay, so 8, 9, 19, and 0. I feel like this isn't correct, but I could be wrong. Oh. We only have it for one account. That's interesting. That should be for multiple accounts. We have 2 accounts. So when I look at this one, we do have 36, which is correct. So let me quickly fix this this projector up here. So context account ID by invoice ID. Where am I filling that one in? State by invoice ID, account ID by invoice ID. This will be a very big table, but you see the numbers move around. It's kind of funny. Which tool do you use for window management? I'm using Amethyst. There we go. So do we have better data now? We only have this one account, even though we have multiple in here. That's interesting. Is this where account ID incorrect? That seems correct. This truncate is clearly not working as expected. Oh, it's not truncate, is it? It's just gonna be delete. Because truncate will also get rid of everything and also reset like auto-incremental indexes or indices. Look at them numbers go. Okay, now we have it better. So now we see it duplicated just because this first row is for account 1 and the second row is for account 2. So we have 3, 7, 7, that's 10. 10 and 16 is 26. And then down here we had 36. So that's about right, I think. That looks like 62. Yeah, that's correct. This seems good. This seems good. All right, let's find somebody to rate. Who shall we rate? Shall we rate CM Griffin, Delta 4 Stream, Bash Bunny? Have you tried ND MUI components? I have tried Material UI, but not ND. Anyone wants to rate somebody they know? What is Bash Bunny doing? Bash Bunny is doing Try Hack Me. Alta 4 is open source Go. Let's rate the Alta 4 stream. All right. So thank you everybody for watching. I'll probably do a few more in the future. I will do a meetup on Tuesday. Here's my big face. So I'll do a meetup on Tuesday that I'll be speaking at. Make sure to follow me on Twitter. Make sure to join the Discord, where I will notify and talk more about this project, Invoice Space, and also let you know when I'll stream. Yep, that being said, did I mention everything? Yep, okay. So let's rate the Alta 4 stream, and then I'll see you all later. Thank you very much.